Hello, you're listening to The Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined this week by Neil.
Hello.
And Paul.
Good evening.
First defeat of the season, but nothing to be too downhearted about, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair enough, isn't it?
Well,
we were expecting it at some point.
Well, I say that. I mean, and what I was alluding to was the result. But actually, there were results that we received this week that might have been more detrimental to us than the one against Walsall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my moment of the week.
Yeah, I was just pretty much going to talk about that for an hour. So,
But I guess Aaron Phillips can come in instead. It's a hilarious joke. It's a pullback. It's a pullback and reel. You thought I was talking about Maddison, but I wasn't. No, I was very clearly talking about Maddison. Paul, you said you were going to do that as your moment of the week. Why don't you kick us off?
Well, it's clearly moment of the week, isn't it? I mean, is he out for 2 months, 4 months? I mean, it seems to be changing every time I look at Twitter, but it's just such a shame because we knew that he was going to have a bit of a dip at some point in the season, but he'd started the season so well, and he seemed so integral to the way we played. And I know it sort of was obvious at Rochdale that we were missing both him and Armstrong, but when he came on in the second half, he was so intelligent with what he did on the ball and the way he used it, and he just gutted for him, really, because he doesn't deserve that the way he started the season. He deserved to sort of try and progress.
Neil, what was your moment of the week?
same for all the wrong reasons. Just him getting injured and then revealing the results. It's not fair, is it? I mean, 3 games worth. I feel like I watch him at the football more than I watch the team at the moment, and it's just like 3 games. And now I've got to wait till January before we potentially see him again. It's just hard luck, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting when you talk about how we ended up setting up and what happened when we played Walsall after he'd left the pitch. But we'll come on to that in due course. For me, it's Railgate, obviously. The news this week that...
oh, yes.
It's good. If everyone goes by train and we have a sellout, it's going to take 18 days to clear the ground.
Worth it, yeah.
It's the fact that... Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
It's the fact that apparently London Midland told him 5 years ago.
Wow.
And then you got Kevin Mayton trying to... And his tweet was like, the council, along with partners, have built a station. And it's like, the council have done chuff... Okay, the council spent some money. The partners are the people who've actually built it. But you've built something which is integrally useless.
Yeah, I mean, I joked about it before the Walsall game as we were walking up, is I said, like I say, just as a farce thing to say to you, Paul, it'll end up being that there won't be any services that run an hour after the game, and then that's literally what's happening. It's realistically only us, isn't it? Although it's probably not. It's probably the shit club. There is shit clubs out there, isn't there?
In The Guardian today, there's a bit about the fact there's some really decent Labour leaders throughout the country, and amazingly, Anne Lucas wasn't mentioned.
Was she not?
I was in shock. Absolute shock.
Yeah. Touched briefly on the fact that we played Walsall there. It seems we're not going to spend too long talking about Walsall because it was about 5 years ago. Not Walsall, sorry, Crewe. That's how long ago it was. I've forgotten who it was. But we are going to sort of touch on it briefly. In fact, I would say it would be remiss of us, given the quality of the 3 goals that we scored, to not touch on it. And I think probably worth a little bit of discussion about the 2 goals that we conceded as well. So, Paul, do you want to take it away? How did we set up? And we'll go through the goals for us.
Well, I mean, we went back to 4-2-3-1, and the first goal was we scored from a corner, and even more amazingly, John Fleck scored from a corner. And John Fleck started the season really well, and I thought against Crewe he was probably as good, if not better, than he's ever been for us. And that goal really... Sometimes goals can sort of make performances look better than they actually were, but I thought that goal was what he deserved out of that game. I thought he was particularly good that day. And then they equalised in what I have issues with Jordan Willis at right back, and while their equaliser was a very good finish, it was down that side, and I think they did see Willis as a weakling. If they didn't, they did seem to attack quite a lot down that side. Whereas in the second half, when Stokes was striding forward, I know Willis is less inclined to, but they didn't seem to capitalise on the space Stokes was leaving behind. but they still managed to sort of isolate Willis quite a few times. And then the second goal was Armstrong.
Yeah.
God, it was a week ago.
Jordan help or?
Yeah, you're going to have to explain what happened in the second goal. Yeah. Sorry, Maddison carried the ball, didn't he? And then he passed it to Armstrong, and Armstrong then cut back onto his left foot and fired it into the far corner.
I mean, a magnificent finish. We had a beautiful view of it, didn't we, from where we were?
But it's also one thing that's going back to John Fleck, and one of the things I've had my issues with him over the years is he didn't carry the ball enough last season. And I know people are sort of saying that his renaissance this season is due to better players around him. But that just carrying the ball 10, 15 yards forward doesn't rely on other players. It relies on you having the initiative to do it. And one thing that really highlighted in that goal for Armstrong was Maddison carried it. And instead of them wasting the pass, he still managed to play a perfect free ball. And that's the thing we've been lacking for a long time is people not only carrying it, but then releasing it wisely instead of just panicking.
So can I quickly touch on the point on the idea of having better players around you? So that's something that I've mentioned a number of times, but my feeling on that isn't necessarily that you... it's almost like preternatural that if you've got players around you that are better. I think it's a mental thing, and I think it's an attitude thing. I think if you feel like you're a good player playing in a shit team, you can have your head drop where you don't try as hard or you don't try something difficult. But actually, if you've got Maddison in front of you, you're almost shown up a little bit if he's doing all this magnificent stuff and then you're not really trying. I think that with Fleck, and to a much lesser extent O'Brien, is what I mean when I'm saying about the positive benefit of having decent players around you, is I don't think you can find shadows to lurk in as much as you can do in a shit team. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's kind of how I see it. I mean, I think they look at him, see he's 18, see what he can do, and especially someone like Jim O'Brien, who's so obvious in everything he does. I think he just looks at the game and thinks, oh, if he's playing well, I'm going to get involved as well, and I'm going to try that pass. And lo and behold, he tries to pass it, and most of the time they seem to come off it, especially if you're giving them to Maddison.
Yeah, and I think it's not just Maddison. I mean, I guess Lemaris, Ricketts has played well so far. Yeah, the Armstrong goal I thought was sensational and probably couldn't be topped in that game until...
Well, yeah, and then Jim O'Brien's wonder strike, which was just... I mean, I can't remember the last time we properly celebrated a goal as much as we did that one. I mean, it was a delightful finish, and in the same way you get the feeling last season Fleck would have spanked that shot in the first half over the bar or shanked it. Yeah. It was a bit... When Jim O'Brien, as soon as he chested the ball down, you knew he was going to find the bottom corner. And I know obviously we've gone on to lose against Walsall, but at that point you did get the feeling that this team was almost unstoppable. And I mean, it was a really good game of football, to be honest. I really enjoyed watching Crewe play. I think they're quite an interesting team to watch, aren't they? And they allowed the game to be quite open, a lot more open than I thought it was going to be. And it was, you know, an enjoyable game, which sometimes they're not at this level. But, you know, it was a good game of football. I think both sides enjoyed it. And you could sort of see that beating Crewe, I mean, Mowbray mentioned it a lot as well, was something that the players were really excited about as well.
We absolutely deserved it as well, didn't we? I mean, they participated, and obviously they made for what was a good game. But when you look at the stats and you just look at how well we played in that first half, especially, I mean, I thought we were dominant, and how we weren't winning more than 1-0 or whatever it was. Or was it 1-0 at half time?
Yeah,
1-0, wasn't it? Yeah.
We had 27 shots, didn't we?
We did. A ludicrous amount.
That's. I mean, we must have been quite deep into double figures of corners.
Yeah, it was a
silly game. Yeah, 3-2. I don't think was a terrible. I don't think it was a poor reflection of it, despite our dominance. Because I do think, and we haven't talked about Crewe's second goal. I'm determined to call him Walsall for some reason. Crawlsall, yeah. But I thought they were threatening. I don't think they were. I thought we were palpably the better team. But I do think we were maybe a little bit lax defensively at times, especially for the second goal when Jordan Willis got his fucking pyjamas on.
I think also during the periods of the game where they came at us a bit more, I thought they actually showed quite well, and it was almost surprising they decided to sit back as deep as they did, because obviously once we'd taken the lead, both times they had enough time to get back at. I know the second one was virtually instantaneous, but even after the first goal, they did take the game at us for a good period before they equalised. And I think that is one concern, is without the ball, are we any good? And I suppose you can tell us that from the Walsall game. Are we as good without the ball as we are with it?
They were stuck between a rock and a hard place, though, in terms of defending deeply, because as we've seen already this season, if anybody that steps out against us is going to get sprung, you're going to get sprung right in the face. Yeah. Neil, have you got a view on any notable performances on there? Paul talked about Fleck. Is there anyone else that you'd pull out as being particularly good or particularly bad?
It's a long time ago, Joey. I can't remember. No, Fleck. I think one person who's been very effective and yet we don't really feel the need to talk about him is Vincelo. I mean, just because of who he is and what he does, I really enjoy watching him play, and it's exactly how I want someone in that position to play. I don't want him being crazy and doing anything mad. Just be solid, and that's what he's been so far, and I'm happy that we're not talking too much about him because it kind of means that he is doing a good job.
There was one moment in the second half, towards the start of the half, that he was the football equivalent of Winston Wolfe, where there was madness in the box, and you saw him coming towards it, and he was like, I don't really want to get involved in this, and then it got to the point where he had to, so he just sort of stole in, took the ball, sort of got out of the box and just played it simply, and you were like, you are quite a luxury defensive midfielder for us.
That's how you do it.
You can see why the Leyton Orient fans are like you. I think we've talked about it in the last few podcasts. He's really one that we've got to wait and see, because I think we have we've been full of praise for players like Steve Jennings in the past, and then they've turned out to be false dawns. He does look a cut above, but then we probably thought that at the time, didn't we?
I didn't have a problem with Steve Jennings, but I never do I? I always say, I like most people, and they just sell him anyway. So.
What about the performances against Walsall there? So I would have said that there was, I guess, one or two more noticeably poor performances. But tell me what you thought. So again, how did we set up? What happened? How did the game pan out first?
Well, it was. There was a drop. There was a drop in how we performed. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I think we all know why that was. And I mean, the team, we felt unstoppable. And I still have in my mind that lineup with Maddison playing in that position and everybody playing around him is not unstoppable, but is certainly very, very potent. And losing them so early on.
Sorry, can I just ask a really quick question before you get into it?
Mm-hmm.
Say that you knew that Maddison was going to get injured after 4 minutes. What would have you done? What system would you have? How would you have reorganised?
I would have done exactly what Moby did.
Would you?
Well, just in the sense that I'm very sort of literal, and I see it as like you've lost a creative player. The most creative player we've potentially got, or the most damaging player we've got on the bench, is Murphy. So I probably would have brought him on. I'm not in a like-for-like sense. Again, I don't think I would have put him behind. I would have put Ramirez behind, and that's kind of what he did, wasn't it? I mean, he kind of took over that role, but I couldn't think. I mean, as the game wore on, I probably would have thought better of it. I mean, they were certainly dominating us from the both flanks, really. So we probably could have done with a more sort of sturdy and default formation almost. But to start with, I kind of thought it was a standard decision, really. Just
very quickly, when Murphy came on, the decision, as it appeared to me, was that O'Brien went behind Armstrong rather than it being Ramirez. And ultimately, I would agree with you. I think on Monday, or whenever it is that we play Southend, I think that's how I would start, with Ramirez, with the ability to feed Murphy and O'Brien, and I'd probably keep them a bit wider. Anyway, sorry, carry on with Walsall.
Yeah, I mean, it was a frustration. I've already alluded to it. I really enjoy watching Maddison. So going to watch a football match and within 7 minutes seeing him go, that was a crushing blow for me. I was cross for quite a few minutes, and then you kind of thought, well, okay, this is a challenge. We kind of need these all the way through the season, so let's see how it goes on. But we just missed something when he's not there. Even when he's not the one on the ball, there's just something about his influence, something about what he gives other players around him. They kind of feel like, I think, Joey, you pointed this out a few times, he is an odd kind of target man, in the sense that he's so unerring when he gets the ball. He's pretty much solid every time he gets the ball, and he'll keep it, and he'll do something sensible with it, or at least something. He'll keep the ball, and we missed that because he wasn't there, and then we kind of started fleeting around with, maybe we'll have Jim O'Brien playing up there. And then Lemires did move over eventually, but I feel like it was more sort of him just a bit desperate to get into the game. But we weren't as sort of blistering as we have been, and I wasn't surprised when Walsall took the lead. It was that same old move where we spoke about it last season, how Reader Johnson comes kind of flying out, and it loses everybody behind him, kind of just loses their way. And it's a real tricky one, because as a defender, there's always going to be a point when one of you has to push out, maybe to go towards the ball, and then everybody has to adapt behind you. So I haven't got an issue with him doing it, but I kind of just felt like that left everybody high and dry. Maybe he was just a bit too committed to a ball that he was never going to get. And it then left Stokes having to move over. You had Ricketts, who was struggling to find his position, and then it was quite an easy sort of through ball. They played him through, and I noticed that Burge just seemed to be completely static. I'm not going to blame him for it, but I looked again and I thought, hang on, you're supposed to dive, and he didn't, which was a bit annoying. But never mind.
Did you think something similar of the second goal as well, by any chance?
In what sense? In that he was static, or just he could have done a bit better?
I just felt with both of them he could have done quite a lot better. And I agree with you. At the time, I hadn't really noticed Johnson go 50 yards out of position somehow. But I do remember thinking quite clearly, I do kind of feel like Burge could do better with that. And then with the second as well. And I've watched them back, and it might be a little bit harsh, but it does feel there was just a little sense of like, I don't know, come on.
I think on the second one, I'm going to defend Birch for a second. I think you look where that guy is, who's basically stood right in front of him, and he sort of knows that he can't just palm it down in front of him because that guy's got a tap in. So what he's tried to do is just get as much distance on it as possible, and it just happened to land at the foot of someone who's facing the right way and put it into the back of the net.
And it happened to be in the middle of the area as well, which is a bit annoying, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you do that slightly to the left, it'd be a bit better.
Yeah, he probably could have pushed it in a different direction, but I think he was so conscious that guy was stood right in front of him that he knew he couldn't just palm it out, because that guy would have scored. And I think, the first one is just one of those ones where the guy's gone through one-on-one. He's obviously tried to make the striker make a decision, and he scored. I've only watched it twice, so it's pretty quick. The second one, I just thought, I can see what he's tried to do. It just, because it isn't high enough for him to tip over the bar.
Yeah, that's true.
It's sort of, it's almost like if he obviously didn't trust himself to catch it, which is fine, and he's just tried to push it as far as he can with the power off it, and it just happened to land at the guy who's facing the right way. If it had bounced and that guy hadn't been there, we'd have cleared it, no one would have mentioned it.
I don't want to spend too much time on that goal, but just a question. I mean, what are the rules on offside now? Because, it's been pointed out that guy was stood in front of Burge when the shot came in, clearly getting in the way, clearly, you have to say, interfering, but he's not offside because he didn't attempt to go for the ball? Is that it?
That would appear to be the rule. The problem is that I think where it gets confusing, so one, that's not what I was told the first time round the rule was, but I've looked it up properly now, and that is the rule. The player that's offside has to be clearly attempting to go for the ball, and clearly is that crux word in there, so it has to be really, really obvious.
Does it mention anything about clearly just getting in the way of the goalkeeper?
Well, that's the thing.
Because it's like, if you're stood there staring at the goalkeeper, mooning him and stuff, you're putting him off and you're offside. Surely, that's got to go against it. But it's almost like opening people up just to stand in the way and not look on the ball, just focus on getting in the keeper's way.
I would be happy to take this from either of you if you've got it, but I've yet to hear a coherent argument for why you wouldn't just make it black and white.
Should be easier, shouldn't it?
I don't understand why wouldn't you just make it so that if you're offside, you're offside under whatever circumstances.
Yeah,
because I suppose the argument is, if you're stood by the corner flag and you're not influencing the game, should the goal stop because you're nowhere near the ball? I
just think it'd clear. I just think it'd stop the confusion.
Well, I sort of agree.
It goes back to that Terry Venables quote, doesn't it? About if you're not, what are you doing if you're not influencing the game?
Well, you could ask that about quite a few of our players, quite a few times over the last number of years.
But with specific reference to the offside rule, that was.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, while the guy, I agree where he stood isn't particularly good, he obviously isn't impeding Birch because Birch has tried to save the ball. And it is one of those ones where it's, to some extent, you've got to give some advantage to the attacking team.
He stood in front of the keeper.
I'm not with that, no.
I mean, it's one of those ones where, by the looks of it, no one's really complained. Then one person on Twitter's gone, "How isn't this offside?" And everyone's gone, "Oh yeah," and it's like, well, I think it's a goal. It's one of those things where there seems to be other issues in the game rather than whether or not he was offside.
Yeah, so I'm not complaining about that goal specifically. I'm complaining about the lack of transparency with the rule itself. I'm not saying that we should replay the game because of that goal, but I don't get why it needs to be more complex than this complex. Neil, carry on.
Where was I? They just scored, hadn't they? Second
yes.
goal. Yeah, I mean they were better than us on the day. They utilised both wings really well. I mean both fullback and winger were both really effective, and that kind of showed us up a little bit when you look at our shape, when we've got two fullbacks who are very pretty decent in a defensive manner, sort of athletically and all that sort of stuff, but I don't see either of them having any sort of technical ability or the requisite technical ability going forward. So that's kind of where I think they're lacking slightly at the moment. It kind of shows. And then when you think about the shape as well, I mean, they had two very definitive wings. We didn't really have any wing. We had various players playing on the wing both sides, and neither of, Armstrong was on there for a bit, Lemires was there, O'Brien moved over at some point, and obviously Murphy was there as well, and at no point did any of them really feel sort of like they were going to make an impact from there. So it was just, there was a conflict between the formations really. I mean, they seemed to have more players, more space than we did, and we didn't really have the shape to deal with it. So it always felt like it was going to go that way. Obviously we score what was that turned out to be a stunning goal from Murphy, and kind of you still think, maybe we can turn it around, maybe that's going to galvanise them, they're going to turn into something that they haven't been for the previous 60 minutes. That didn't really materialise, although
I felt like that for about 3 minutes.
Did you really?
I was just like, maybe we can get on top here. There was like, it's not happening, is it?
We've got loads of time left. And looked at like 88. They were, we scored that goal, but it kind of felt a little bit inevitable. The game, we weren't really in it. They were better than us, and then aside from maybe fluking a goal or really Johnson heading one in near the end, I didn't really feel like we earned it or we were actually going to take it. That's not to say that we played appallingly. I still feel like we showed signs and we showed the intent. It's just that it's a different dynamic without Maddison. So that's our challenge now, isn't it? It's kind of how do we adapt to this situation where we've got something which worked very, very effectively. How do we now mould a new formation, a new style? Because when you're missing that piece of the puzzle, you can't. We don't have anybody like for like who can just replace him. And even if you put someone like Lemires in there, you then got to adjust it and put someone else on the right side where Lemires plays, and then it throws the dynamic completely. And Lemires is a different kind of player. I mean, he's got all the skill in the world. And Joey, do you remember that bit in the game where he kind of just kept rolling it for about 5 minutes? Half the player just pulling it back, and eventually just pulled away from him. And it was stunning. That showed him at his very best. But I think we've kind of spoke about it before, where he doesn't quite have the same belief as Maddison yet in terms of what I think his ability when he's running with the ball. Maddison will take the ball, nudge it away from a player, and he's going to pull away and he's going to do something with it. Lemires is a little bit, I'm not saying ponderous because obviously it's a bit negative, but he takes his time, and he's not as decisive. And he has played some great balls, don't get me wrong, but he's just not quite as decisive as Maddison yet. So they're not the same player. I don't think we can kind of like for like replace them. We just need to find a new way. That shouldn't be difficult because they're all good players. It's just, I guess it's very hard to do that mid-match.
I think the thing for me is that I think last week we said that Lemires and Maddison need each other, and the more that I sort of ruminated on that, the more I think that Lemires needs Maddison probably a lot more than Maddison needs Lemires. But that's not a criticism of Lemires. I still think he's a very, very good player. The fortunate thing, I think, for us is that we've got, in what is a pretty threadbare squad, we have somehow lost 2 players with pretty much ready-made replacements, at least in terms of body. So Phillips is, I mean, for a bunch of us, and I mean Cov fans in there, but maybe even all 3 of us here, I would probably prefer Phillips at right back anyway.
I think all told,
it's a big chance for him now, isn't it? I mean, he's got, 3 or 4 months? And you get the feeling if he's not first choice right back by the end of these 4 months, then he's never going to quite make it.
But I also felt like Willis's injury was almost, and I don't mean this in any sort of callous way, was almost fortuitous on Saturday, because I thought he was poor, and I don't think he was great against Crewe either. Like I say, the second goal of theirs especially is bewildering. It's just like he's just not there. And I think Willis is, as we've talked about, a much better centre-back. But then we've got Phillips to come in. So anyway, back to the point. Jacob Murphy is a player that against Millwall I thought was very exciting, and then obviously scored on Saturday. It's just a case of, I think, making sure that he comes in and that they just get a way of playing that fits the 3 of them as opposed to having Maddison. I think it'll be difficult, but I don't think we should consider ourselves ready for capitulation because of Maddison's sort of non-featuring.
I haven't seen Murphy as much as you two, but to me he seems just a lot more direct.
Yeah, a lot more direct.
Is that
Absolutely. Bigger, stronger, not as bright, not as hot ball retention wise, but exciting and fast and quite big actually. Not enormous, but certainly he's got a lot more physical presence. But I think it'll be quite exciting to see more of him, albeit it's not the circumstances we'd have liked. Neil, was there anything else of note that you found from the Walsall game?
Not really. I mean, Armstrong was quieter than he has been. I mean, you still feel like if he gets a genuine chance, you've got every opportunity that he's going to put it away. But I think it was just the game wasn't quite right for him. It was just we didn't have to link up with Maddison. He lost it early on. He played a lot of it kind of towards the wings, which didn't suit us because obviously Walsall were far more sort of solid than Wigan were. So no, I mean that was a little bit unfortunate, but we're not under any illusions. We know what sort of level we're playing at. This is League One. These are some young players. They're going to fleet in and out of games. They're going to have games where they're not as sort of impactful as they had been. But I'm not entirely sort of disillusioned by the team just because we lost a match and Maddison's gone. I mean, it's not ideal, but I'm interested. I think Tony Mowbray's made some good decisions so far this season, so I'm just interested to see how he's going to deal with this situation, because it's a challenge. I mean, we knew we were going to face them this season, and I've got no problem with that happening, because you've got to adapt, and you're never going to succeed if you just have one plan. The only frustration is that, especially this, like a personal one for me, is like the last sort of really exciting player we had was Callum Wilson, and I missed out on most of him because all of his good stuff happened at Sixfields. So Maddison's come in, another really exciting player, probably excited even more so just in the sense of I just drool over him all the time. He's that good, and now I can't watch him for quite a long time, and it's just annoying more than anything else.
No, absolutely so.
How did Bryn Morris play when he came on?
He's pretty ineffective so far. He doesn't seem to believe in himself as much as the other young players. He kind of gets the ball. He's technically sound, but there's no sort of real directness there. There's no sort of, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to make something happen. It's kind of like, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to control it. There's a lot of thinking going on. It's functional so far, but with a bit of time, he is young again. It only takes one good game or one good moment really to sort of burst him into life.
Where did he play? Because didn't he come on for Jim O'Brien at half time?
He did. It's midfield, wasn't he, Joe? He was pretty
ever so
changed shape of it, didn't we?
Yeah, ever so slightly deeper than O'Brien. But I think that was probably warranted because I think part of me feels like I watched that game through sky blue eyes. I think if I was a Walsall fan, I'd consider it a bit of a domination. I did think that. Yeah. I think they were really good. I thought they were a really, really good team. And it was interesting, you, Neil, saying about the sort of the tactics of it. And it reminds me of what we were talking about with Millwall, where we were saying, well, are we going to struggle against their physical presence? And in the end, we said, actually, it was difficult for them because we were small and technical. But I think sometimes that wins and sometimes the other thing wins. And I think it was the same with that. Sometimes we might have got in between their lines and made it difficult for them with what was a reasonably rigid system that they'd got. But actually, no, it was the other way. They stretched us and took it and punished us by being a better wide team than we were. And I just think he kind of ran out of options on the bench, I think, with bringing Morris on, or maybe he wanted to shore it up a little bit, but I almost feel like it was kind of a bit redundant. I think they'd kind of proven that they'd got the beating of us and there wasn't a great deal we could do.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to sound too pessimistic about that. I came out of it honestly feeling one of the least bothered about a defeat I've come from in a while. The 5th game in 2 weeks, and I know both sides have that, but even still, it's a very, very young team. I thought Armstrong was pretty much non-existent, but again, that's 4 games for him in 2 weeks. Has scored a whole hatful of goals, and it was the sort of game where he's not Leon Clark. He's not going to get involved out of. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to drop deep and try and hold it up or anything. If we're not on top, we're not going to see a great deal of him apart from sort of chasing back a bit. And Walsall were good. I just kind of felt I was more bothered about the heat, to be honest with you, because I was wearing jeans as a last minute decision instead of shorts, and it was too hot.
It was too hot, wasn't it?
It was really, really too hot. And I've seen people complaining about the mid-game water breaks for players. And seriously, fuck you if you're complaining about that, because I would have happily stopped the game and gone out for, admittedly, a beer or whatever. But I needed some water at about 20 minutes in.
Joey, you were wearing a nice shirt, I noticed. Who was it again?
I got a...
Can you remember?
It was Crete, yeah. OFI Crete.
I spotted it from above. Oh, that's nifty.
I thank you.
Expecting it.
Yeah. It's a classic football shirt. It's had a 20% sale on. I wish anyone sponsored us, because I reckon we drop enough names occasionally that I mean, not that we have enough people to listen to this that would end up going on to sort of complete a sale. Yeah. But yeah, that was that. Okay, are we done with Walsall?
Yeah, we'll start that off. We lost.
So, yeah, okay. We'll have a little musical sting and then we'll go on to some Southend preview. Right, crack on with Southend preview. There's no. I still go to call it going for gold. What's going on? My head doesn't work. We've got no only correct. We've got no only correct today because fuck you, we haven't. All right. So we're going to go straight on to Southend preview. I've tried to actually do a bit of preview this time round, like a bit of proper one. I went on to Shrimpers Net, which is their forum, where all 5 of their belligerent fans sit and talk to each other. It was very, very odd. The first thing that was immediately apparent about that was that 5 years on, and I say that as someone who only learnt that he played for them after having read about it today, still massively mourning the loss of Frank Musa.
Huh? Really?
He played nearly 100 times for them.
This didn't happen.
Yeah, seriously. They were apparently. It says on Wikipedia that he was in the team that got promoted to the Championship. I don't think they did get promoted to the Championship. I think they got promoted to League One.
Where did we get him from?
We got him from Leicester. Leicester signed him. Yeah, from there. From Southend, having hit the heights there. I think he was about 20, 21 when he was there. Palpable from their forum. People had got it as their little sort of, what is it called at the bottom of their ridiculous mad posts that they put on.
Just like the sort of bit quotey thing.
Signature?
Yeah, signature, that's the one, yeah. A handful of people on there with Frank Musa. Also, an ex-Cov connection in Gary Deegan playing in midfield for him.
Oh, isn't he? Lovely.
Yeah. I still think he would have. I would have kept him, and he would have been here for about 8 years now, wouldn't he? The main thing of Gary Deegan that I remember was, did we beat QPR 1-0 one year, and that he claimed a goal that would still be going towards Villa Park now had it have not hit a defender.
That volley or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Quite early on, yeah. I seem to remember him scoring quite a few for us. He got the equaliser against Leicester, did he? Or was that McPake when we drew 2-2 that year?
McPake, wasn't it? Some weird. Was that like a volley? Again,
yeah, you're
volley.
right. Like some sort of mad
volley.
Bicycle kick. On to proper Southend preview then. So they've played 5 games so far. They've only scored 1 goal in those 5 games, and they've drawn 1 of those. They've drawn 2, sorry, and they've lost 3. In fairness, they had Brighton away in the League Cup, which they lost 1-0, and they've played Walsall, Doncaster and Swindon in their last 3 games. Supposedly their Swindon performance was a lot better. In general, it seems like the sort of levels of optimism amongst the Southend fans that I had a look at was sort of rising, but they are obviously worried about the fact that they haven't scored any goals. They signed David Mooney in the summer from Leyton Orient, picking up that corpse like a vulture, such as we did, who I think probably most remembered for having a really good goal scoring season 2 years ago, but in fact when you have a look at it, he scored 8 goals in the first 10 games and then dropped right off. I think he might have got injured, but even still when he came back didn't do that well. Yeah,
I missed who you're talking about.
Oh, David Mooney, sorry, from
Mooney. Oh yeah,
from Leyton Orient.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who seems to be their chief striking talent, although they've also got Noel Hunt, which passed me by completely. Ex-Reading and Leeds striker Noel Hunt. Do you want to have a guess how old Noel Hunt is?
17.
He played for Leeds.
He did play. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can't. Another one that I learned earlier. Although when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I can't remember that. I think he's played for. He's played for 2 clubs since leaving Reading. Curiously,
it's like, I don't know if you've seen it, but everywhere I've seen Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson scored a hat-trick. Yeah, did you know that it was only a couple of years ago he was playing for teams like Tamworth and Kettering?
Yeah, I saw that.
You mean that bit of his career where he was at Coventry?
Yeah.
Or do we ignore that whole part of his career?
Yeah. Like
I see you did.
The 13 games that he played with Kettering on loan about 6 years ago or something. You just thought, okay, right. He was quite good for us, by the way, guys. You'd be like, yeah, no, we don't care about that. We fall in that unfortunate crevasse of shitness where we're not shit enough for a stat like that, but we are shit enough for most other things. So they have... Noel Hunt, by the way, is 32. Which I was quite surprised at. I still thought he'd be about... And maybe he's a slightly baby-faced man, and that's why I thought he'd be younger, but who knows. They've got Daniel Bentley in goal, who supposedly is their best player, looking at a couple of different things. He was the one that was picked out by Side Sammy at the start of the season, and their fans said that he's pretty much the only name on their team sheet that's a likely starter. They reckon that Phil Brown, Fake Tan's Phil Brown, of course, who's the Southend manager, has basically picked a wildly different team every single game so far and has been sort of really unpredictable in what he's going to do, and is obsessed with signing midfielders in a way reminiscent of Dowie by the sounds of it. So their latest target is Stephen McLaughlin from Nottingham Forest, who I'll be honest, I don't know a great deal about. But their keeper, very, very good apparently. Young English keeper, very highly regarded. But it seems that they've sort of chopped and changed an awful lot. The one thing that they are pretty certain of, by the looks of it, is that they won't be scoring many goals. I will say that their one goal scorer so far was David Worrell, who you would imagine links up particularly well with defender Adam Thompson.
Oh, very good.
I think that's all I've got for Southend preview. So let's do some predictions. Neil, what do you reckon?
Feeling good. I'm feeling like we can shake it up again. 2-0.
2-0 seems good to me. Paul?
I think we've got to continue our winning run against a team this poor, so it's got to be 2 or 3-0.
Yeah, I'm going to book the trend and be more optimistic scoreline than you two. I think it'd be 3-0. Or possibly 3-1. I mean, we are starting to ask questions of our defence, I would suggest. But I'm going to go for 3-0 because by the looks of it and by the sounds of it, this isn't a good team. And I really want us to beat Phil Brown's team.
How would you line up without Maddison?
As I said before about the Walsall game. So I'd play the same team, but with Phillips coming in for Wilson, I'd play Lemaris behind. I'd play Lemaris through the centre. I'd play Murphy and O'Brien. O'Brien on the right, Murphy on the left, and I'd tell them to stick out wider and come inside from a wider position, that inside, and try and get Lemaris to feed the balls between their centre back and their full back for them. You two? Paul, do you want to start us off? What would you go for?
I'd bring Tudguy in and play Armstrong a bit deeper.
Oh, really?
Just because my concern with having seen the game against Rochdale, obviously I didn't see the Walsall game, is without Maddison, he's holding the ball up and having someone just to sort of take the pressure off. And I'm not sure that Lemaris is particularly good at that. And I think I'd bring Tudguy in just to give us a bit of a focal point.
Okay. Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I think being at the Rico, I think I'll probably go with the team that he adjusted to when Maddison went off the other day. So we'll have Murphy in there. We'll start with an attacking looking lineup and just see how it goes. I mean, one question I do have is around sort of transfer window. That's soon to shut. Any rumours? Any sign that we may be able to get someone in before that closes?
I've not heard anything other than Latif Alfadaliu, whose name even I'm surprised that I was able to pronounce.
Is that the lad who was at Bury and at West Brom?
West Brom, yeah.
What's his stats like? Because Mowbray said, he's a lad who can score goals, and you're like,
It doesn't look like it.
If he's, how come he's sort of without a club this fine season if he's a man who's almost guaranteeing goals?
I don't intend on talking too long about it. I'm not entirely... I was kind of expecting that Mowbray would come out and say he's just a player that I know and I said he could come here and train for fitness. But who was it? I can't remember the manager there was that had him at Bury. Said that at Tamworth briefly. He said that he expected that he'd be able to make a step up to League One, or if not, definitely League Two. And that was hardly a ringing vote of confidence for the team aiming to be at the top end of League One. But yeah, well, who knows? I guess there continues to be irons in fires. The last I saw was that there was nothing imminent.
Yeah, I feel like we're still lacking, aren't we? We're lacking in the options more than anything else. So when one thing goes wrong, which inevitably it will do because it's us, the ability to change it in a meaningful manner is quite crucial. And so far, really, it's kind of Tudguy and nothing, which isn't a big enough change for me, I don't think. So we do need someone else.
No, I would agree.
Well, Tudguy seems to be a better option than Morris, who you both seem to just sort of imply was pretty useless against Walsall.
Not necessarily useless, just not. It was hard. I think it was hard for him because of the nature of the game, but yeah, it didn't set the world on fire.
It does concern me a little bit the fact that hasn't he sort of captain England at sort of every level? And
why does that concern you?
Well, it concerns me the fact that if he's the best player that's coming through, who's English, it's sort of, well, I talked to my mate Richie, who is a Middlesbrough fan, and he was like, how's he getting on? And it's like, well, you can tell he's been at an academy since the age of 8, because he looks like an academy midfielder. And sort of what Neil was sort of alluding to earlier, where he gets the ball, he passes the ball, he moves. But there's no sort of spark of intelligence or creativity there. And these are the problems with having just everyone going through academies. You just generate these sort of players.
He's also not started a game, though.
No, but I think there were other players who we've had in the past who have had sort of... I think, by the sounds of it, I don't think they know where he's meant to be playing, because it sort of says in other places he's a defence midfielder, centre-half, and we're playing him as the attacking point of a midfield 3. And that can't help anyone. But you would have thought Mowbray would know that better than anyone, having sort of worked with him originally at Middlesbrough. Having
raised him from a wee pup, as I believe
from
he did. Yeah.
From an egg.
Having found him in a Moses basket, having raised him as his own. Right. I think we're going to wrap that up. Have we got anything else that we need to get in crucially before we go? Yes, no?
Just get well, James.
Yeah, get well, James. Get well, #JM10.
And more importantly, don't sign a contract for anyone else.
Yeah,
no.
Don't do anything. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address is neelamptyshow@gmail.com. The Twitter is @neelamptyshow. And all it leaves me to do is to say thank you to Neil.
Cheers, thanks.
Thank you to Paul.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you for listening. Bye.